Oh, we're live. Good evening. Happy Bank Holiday Monday. I imagine there may be people who've got better things to do on a Bank Holiday Monday, as it's not a normal Monday. Either way, I hope you're having fun. And if you're with us, then that's great, because we're going to bring you an awesome podcast, of course, over the next hour or so. Cheers. Yeah, I'm going to do this on wine tonight. It's been that kind of a week. Get any questions you want in for the guys. That'd be great. Who have we got on tonight? I hear you shout at your devices. Well, that's who we've got on tonight. Mr. Brigham, Mr. Sanders, Hodgie the Hack with his Iron Brew. Hopefully I've pronounced that right. Now, apparently this is an Iron Brew original version, 1901, when they put more sugar in it. I'm not taking this Stew off mute.
Iron Brew.
Oh, hey, how can you take yourself? Oh my, right, you're going. See you later. Off you get. No. Anyway, they're all there waiting. I didn't realize they could take themselves off mute at that point. That's good to know for future. As you know, I will share this on the old Facebook at this point, which takes a few moments. So please bear with me. Obviously, we'll be talking about some absolute gold tonight, given there's quite a bit that's happened. So, if you have any questions, get them in. We'll try and go through them as much as possible. It won't be our Q&A pod, although I think Steve did mention to me we should do that sooner. Maybe this should have been the opportunity, but we will keep a good close eye on the comments, because clearly people are going to want to talk about stuff themselves. I completely understand that. For those of you who've logged in early, I don't want any questions about stuff that I wrote in The Athletic. We covered all that off. I'm joking, but obviously the piece is there if you want to read it. Give it a look, because it took me about 10 months. So that's grand. I'm just sharing the video across all of the Facebook, and then we'll be good to go. We are live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. So whatever the forum, I believe, if you send a comment, then I'll pick it up. Maybe not Twitter replies. That might be the only shortfall. But I don't think we get many of those anyway, so I think we're all right. And yeah, any questions for Steve and Stu and Dan as well, of course, get those in. And me too. Nearly there, done. Yeah, definitely done. I will then check that the buzzer works. Yeah, so we're going to do a bit of that in a bit. And we are need to try and make this a bit shorter, but we're done. 3 minutes in. Stu's got to go before the end because he's a basketball guy these days. So I reckon we crack on. Enjoy the podcast. This could be brilliant. It always could be brilliant, couldn't it? Right, let's go. Hello all and welcome to edition 103 of On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that couldn't raise its level to the podcast top flight if it tried. I'm Michael Bailey. I cover the Canaries for The Athletic. I hope you find... Did I do this last week? I think I did. I hope this... It's such a straightforward sentence, and I do sincerely mean it, that I hope this finds you safe and well. On the way, down, down, deeper and down. It's a status quo song. There's probably a status quo joke there to be made by someone, but I'm not making it right now. Not such a buen dia. Definitely made that pun about 8 times. And there are still 4 games to play, which is more of a statement than anything. We will work through all that and more, and I hope the intro was suitably somber yet entertaining. With our guests this evening, they are Norwich numberwang chief, aka our very own Steve Sanders.
Hi, Michael. Yes, I'm sure our younger members of our audience will be very entertained by your status quo references in the intro there.
Go check them out. We also have former Norwich City head of content and program editor, and I'm sure huge status quo fan, Dan Brigham.
Hello, Michael. Yeah, I'd say a good 3 out of 10 for status quo.
That's more than
I've heard of them. I've listened to a couple of their records.
I love that. Finally, we have our own Scottish maestro, commentator and journalist. It's Hodgie the Hack, aka Stuart Hodge. Hey,
Yes,
Hodgie.
also known by my real name. How we doing, troops?
I remember what it was. I was also being told that I couldn't unmute you, so I was like, "Is he going to unmute himself?" And then, thankfully, you did.
That's all right, mate. See, the thing is, I have a bit of StreamYard gizmo myself, so I just put my tuppence worth in here and there as and when necessary.
Good man. Thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for everyone who is watching live and listening, for joining us at this time. Is that the way to put it? I think so. It's a pleasure. Steve, how are you?
Fine. Feel quite. I didn't feel any different at the final whistle. I know we're not talking about the football yet, but I didn't feel any different at the final whistle than I did before. So on an even keel, and it's been a nice bank holiday weekend, isn't it? So can't complain.
I love it. Well, good for you. I'm glad. I had a terrible night's sleep the last couple of nights' sleep, so there's all the processing going on. Maybe Dan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Michael. I think I cheered myself up by watching Fulham just beat Luton 7-0, which gave us hopefully a nice glimmer of what it might be like in the Championship again next season for a squad with a team with a squad like ours. But it also made me a little bit sad as well, because even if we do well next season, that means we're just back in the Premier League again and rinse repeat.
42 goals.
43 now.
43 is it?
Guy Whittingham's record, didn't he?
Oh, nice.
David Marshall still saved his penalty to take us to the Euros, though.
If you're Scottish, there is a silver lining, and obviously, maybe the World Cup, because
it says everything. It says everything that I'm clinging to silver linings with Scotland.
Well, didn't Kenny McLean score the penalty that sent you through as well?
Yes,
he did indeed.
Come on, Kenny.
Well, let's pray for his toe then. You're going to need to get those front pages in the Daily Record. Pray for Kenny's toe.
It's all right. Whenever I sell a story to the Daily Record, they take my bloody byline off it. So
that's rude.
They'll be getting nothing more from me, I can assure you that.
Do you send them Hodgie the Hack or Stuart Hodge?
Stuart Hodge on those ones, but what they do is they write lies into your story and then take the byline off. Good sub-editing there.
In your opinion. Let's move on. I'm glad you're well, Stu, as he's drinking his Iron Brew.
And brew.
Nothing stronger.
Iron Brew. Oh, God. Okay. Let's crack on immediately. And I have written that down here as well. With this week's Headline Act. In the same way, you don't probably bother with game plans when you've already been relegated. I haven't really bothered with intros to these segments. But basically, there's only one place to start, obviously, which is that Norwich lost 2-0 at Aston Villa on Saturday. There was an entirely predictable Burnley comeback that made sure that Norwich were then relegated. I called it while they were 1-0 down at Watford. Relegation confirmed with 4 games to go. For those wondering, in 2020, it was with 3 games. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. It was with 3 games left. So we'll look to the future in a little bit later on. But first of all, I think we need to obviously rake over all of the season. But in probably about 10 minutes if we could. So, and in a way that we haven't already done over the course of the season, Steve. So if you want to start, what I would say, and I'll just get this out there. I've written a piece on The Athletic. It's about the season. Read it if you want. I wrote it all. It took me months, obviously. And I was like, God, this is also obvious because everyone knows all this and it's all been written down. And that hasn't been the reaction it's got, which I suppose surprised me because I just feel like we've said the same things all season. So,
but here's a question, Michael. Right?
Oh,
did you write this with a view to us being relegated 10 months ago? Because if so, nobody'd be surprised and nobody would blame you.
Well, no, because I would like to think I would have had it finished before 2 p.m. on Saturday, and about 10 hours later than I'd promised it to everyone.
Are you like when Boris Johnson used to be a columnist who used to write one column for one position and the opposite column for the opposite position?
Yeah.
So like back in August, were you writing something about staying up or getting into 7th? tackling the Europa League.
All right.
Is that a piece that's never going to be filed?
4,000 words on survival that will never be seen. Yeah, you're right. No.
You could maybe give them to Ross Kemp or something. Let's see what you get. 4,000 words on survival.
Yeah, maybe Pete Rutzler for next season, who covers Fulham for the Athletic. No. Obviously, what I mean is, it's full of stuff you pick up for the whole year and the whole season, obviously, and things like that. But yeah, whatever the question was, Steve, do you want to answer it? What was the question?
I mean, I can't remember.
Why
are we going down? Is that
the question?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'll cop out of giving a full answer and just say read Michael's piece. It pretty much covers everything, and it's a great reminder of just what the world's longest car crash this season has been. I guess if we're trying to bring it down to 10 minutes, and I had to highlight something, I don't feel like I'm saying anything that hasn't been said before. The summer transfer window may have been the worst in the history of the entire club. I was trying to think if we've ever had one worse. Maybe that one where Roda brought in like a truckload of 18-year-olds on loan, and we went down that season. But I'm just looking at the net. So we brought in 12 players for the first team squad. Christos Schollis, Milot Rashica, Josh Sargent, Ben Gibson, Dimi Anulis, Angus Gunn, Ozan Kabak, Pierre-Les Malou, Matthias Norman, Brandon Williams, Billy Gilmore. Is it any of them had a good season? And that's
not one of them
million.
has been a success. Not one.
And that's £57 million worth of player.
I
don't agree that Buendia should not have been sold, because I think there was a player that didn't want to play for us, and I think we've seen this season how damaging it can be to have a talented player on your books that doesn't really want to play. So that money had to come in, but it was just spent horrendously badly. And not only was it spent on players that haven't performed, it was spent in areas that we didn't need. What we needed was, and all in your piece, Michael, top class centre half. Kabak may have been that person, but I think I remember saying at the time, there's a 21-year-old that's been relegated twice. Is he going to come in and shore up our defence? Not sure. A centre midfielder that could replace Ollie Skip. Gilmore was never going to be that player. Norman's not that player. And then a player who could replace Emi Buendia, and that ain't going to be Josh Sargent. It's just you can stick him in that position. He's not going to be Emi Buendia. So I think we can boil it down onto all the things that have gone wrong off the pitch. But if you don't build a squad that's fit for the Premier League, particularly when you've lost your two best players from the previous season, you are done for. And it became apparent fairly quickly that was the position that we were going to be in. And here we are, 4 games from the end. Roughly, that's, I think, how you'd have expected it to turn out. And so it has.
I suppose the interesting thing, Dan, is that Norwich changed their head coach in November because they were adamant that someone else could get more out of them. Do you think it's fair that kind of proven between Dean Smith and Daniel Farke that there wasn't much more anyone could have done with them? I mean, could have literally have appointed, I don't know, a magician of a manager, and it still would have been the same result?
Yeah, it's the old saying, you can't polish a turd. And as much as I think all of us certainly thought it was time for Farke to leave, and I think we probably did need to find out whether another manager could get more out of that squad, and I think it was the right decision. But the season, the 32 games so far have proven that I don't think many managers would have got out of it. I mean, maybe if Adam Eder had stayed fit and we'd played 2 up front, as we did against Everton and Watford, and it looked like we'd sort of stumbled across a winning formula, maybe we might have had a late charge and given ourselves a decent chance of staying up. But really, how many teams would stay up with that midfield? I mean, you can talk about the back line and you can talk about up front, but without a good midfield in the Premier League, you've got no chance. You can have the nicest, greatest, biggest bucket in the world, but if you've got a massive hole in it, like we have in central midfield, then you're struggling. And Lys Malou looks like a decent player, I think, across the season. Rupp, decent player, injured too often, obviously. Gilmore, probably a decent player. McLean, a good championship player. All of those players, and we've said it lots of times before, would probably work well as part of a 3-man midfield if they were the only one and next to 2 others who are really good and a step up. And there's a bit of revisionism with some people saying, well, fans didn't call out the fact we'd had a bad summer transfer window, which is nonsense on two levels. A, it's not the fans' job to know how good Chollis is going to be or how good Elise Malou is going to be when you've not watched them play. It's you put your trust in the recruitment team. And B, I think it's probably fair to say nearly everyone was saying we needed a holding midfielder to come in. And the club obviously felt like they needed a holding midfielder to come in, as you wrote in your piece, Michael, about Robert Andrich, who ended up going to Bayer Leverkusen and by all accounts tearing up trees there. He may have been the piece of the puzzle that we missed. But Matthias Norman is not a holding midfielder, so we ended up buying someone or bringing in someone on loan. He wasn't even fit for that position, and without that midfield, and I think a lot of us were saying it from the start, with a midfield lacking sort of authority that Ollie Skip brought, and the way to win back the ball, and the way he read the game, the way he sort of calmly regained possession and moved it on. Then, with a bit of hindsight, we were always screwed without that kind of player in there, and it doesn't matter. How we don't really know how good Rashica is. We don't really know how good Dow could have been in the Championship, because our midfield was never setting up that attacking lineup as much as it should have done, and it also wasn't obviously giving enough protection to our back line as well. So it doesn't really matter who your defenders are when your midfield isn't good enough.
It does. I'm just going to say, Stu, it does strike me that it was. I'm pretty sure it was being said last April, March, February. Certainly that, what are you going to do without Ollie Skip? So it does strike me as everyone knew that was to happen. I can't get my head around how they didn't get that right. And even I would imagine they were planning. They knew that Emmy was probably going to be sold. I think that was why they did it so quickly. So there's two things there, and always comes back.
If I can just say, that's the one good piece of thing we did in the summer transfer windows. I mean, I don't think we should have sold Buendia, but moving on early was great, because it gave us time to plan, didn't it? We didn't use that time particularly well.
It did, but again, how many promoted teams go up but lose their best player? And so you're already having to improve your team, and then at least get it to the original level before first.
It's interesting just watching that Fulham game and seeing how good Fabio Carvalho is for them, and he's off to Liverpool, so they're making the same mistake as we are. Selling their best player.
I was wondering that. I was wondering if they might loan him back, but who knows? Sorry, Stu.
No, it's all right. Right, there's a lot of talk about individuals here, right? And we're talking about individual players, areas of the pitch, things like that. But the problem at Norwich City boils down to more than that. I mean, it's not just individuals. There has been a total lack of any coherence from one area of the club to another throughout every stage of the season from the very start of the summer. So you knew that Emi Buendia was going, you knew that Ollie Skip was going, so there should be a succession place in plan for that in terms of recruitment, right? But you've got recruitment here, you've got the playing squad here, and the style of play here, right? When Stuart Webber first came to the club, Daniel Farke's first season, he bedded in. Second season, rampant, brilliant, great, title-winning season. My favourite season as a club football fan, fantastic, right? At that point, everything within the Norwich City operation was aligned. It was going in a singular direction. There was a sense of purpose, and everyone kind of going in the one direction. Now you look at Norwich City, and it looks like this season there has been absolutely no sense of coherence between the playing style on one hand and the recruitment on the other, because it looks like it's been trying to fit players in some way into a style that gets results. Daniel Farke, a bit like when Alex Neil's team got thumped and conceded loads of goals at Newcastle, he kind of lost the bottle to play his way. So he then became a manager trying to play in a different way with the squad of players he had. I would argue that Stuart Webber should have backed himself to get rid of Daniel Farke sooner. I think the first big mistake that was made, other than the recruitment in the summer window, which you could maybe have made work had there been more alignment in other areas of the club, because you can make groups of individuals work in a team if you have alignment. But there was no alignment. So what happened was he held on to Farke for too long, firstly. So that allowed a collective malaise to set in that when Dean Smith came in, he was hardly able to galvanise. And what Dean Smith's done is he's come in, and there's been a few kind of fits, starts, sputters, but the kind of results we've been getting have not been playing in the way that we were designed to think that Norwich City were going to play under Stuart Webber. It was done in a way where we were kind of sclaffing goals in and grinding out results and that kind of thing. From every stage of the process this season, nothing has been right at Norwich City in terms of things going in one direction. The messaging out of the club has been horrible at all the wrong times, from recent interviews given to, you go back to the BK8 scandal, all of that kind of stuff. If you look at this whole season and you take into account all of the different things that have happened, it has been disastrous at every single chapter. And there has to be someone takes account for that. And I actually think that the likes of yourself, Michael, and the rest of the collective media need to be asking harder questions. They need to be going in and saying, what is happening here? Because it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for this football club just to settle into this pattern of yo-yoing and accepting that as a given. And when it has been so badly managed throughout the entirety of the season, not just portions of the season, but the entire collective of the season, then you've got to say, come on, someone's got to be accountable here. And I'm hearing no voices going above the parapet.
I can't believe you've thrown in the ask the hard questions.
Sorry,
I thought this was a safe space. Okay, yeah, duly noted. And I'm sure we'll get to speak to Stuart Webber at some point. I'm not entirely convinced it'll be immediately, but
we'll see. That in itself is not right. There should be someone at the club coming out and addressing it. So I'm no mate. Obviously you're one of my good mates. I'm not going to go at you. But the point is, not enough has been done to hold these people to account, and that is partly because they are not making themselves available. There used to be this that we were told that Norwich City were going to have open lines of communication and a dialogue with the fans. And what I've seen is, at various points, it's kind of fragmented. And I think the BK thing was the point at which I felt there was a clear divergence happened between people inside the club and the supporters. And since then, that alignment has not been there. That's alignment in terms of headspace, alignment in terms of the football, recruitment and playing style, completely disparate.
Can I just add to that? As I was working at the club, obviously, in 17-18, when Webber and Farke had their first season together. And this must apply to every single club when they talk about lines of communication. It's very easy when you're winning the title twice and they were very open. And Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke were very generous with their time to not just the local media, but also local fan groups as well. But even in 17-18, when things were going badly, the lines of communication were poor and they shut up and they got paranoid. And I think that's just across the board in football. It's not just at this football club. So it shouldn't really be any shock that the lines of communication have not been as good as they should be this season.
And the interesting thing is this relegation, it's very different to the one 2 years ago. There's for so many different reasons around it in terms of the caveats and what have you. I mean, I don't want to be revisionist, but I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. You know, I sat here lamenting it 2 years ago because Norwich kept taking the lead in games and then couldn't hold on, which is obviously one sort of issue. This team, I don't think it's done that once. And they didn't have that. If they conceded, they didn't score. That was it. It was just like nothing there. When they got ahead, they were pretty good, but it was just so infrequent. I don't know which is the best out of that. I saw so much more identity and shape in terms of what Norwich were doing. Even if the players weren't potentially as good or they were hitting their ceiling, there was actually a lot more that you kind of understood about it. Whereas this is a mishmash. Alignment. It's like, well, it's alignment.
Well, I think what I've learned from this season is that the phrase in terms of being a football fan of "it's the hope that kills you" is a load of nonsense, because hope is pretty much, I'd rather go down with hope than I have this season, which has been pretty much throughout apathy. Thinking, it's apathy.
Are we sure?
Explain that word to Dean Smith. But yeah, I mean, and I think Smith absolutely should stay. I'll probably say it again before the end of this season. I've said it before. But I was just having a look before we came on at the games under his management. And bear in mind, this is under a new management. And remember how bad it was under Daniel Farke, right? So his first two games was Southampton win, Wolves draw, not bad. And then since then, we've played 21 times. We won 3 of those, all against teams whose performance was so bad they deemed it necessary to sack their manager. We've drawn 3 against a team that played for 80 minutes with 10 men in Newcastle, and 2 teams who missed penalties in Palace and Brighton. And then the other 15 games, we've lost 12 of them by more than a single goal. I mean, and that is under new management. And I don't blame Smith really in the slight. Well, obviously he has to take some accountability, but he never could have kept us up. It has been a total disaster of a season, and just every week has been depressing as a fan. And Honestly, I think we'll come back next season and we'll be optimistic again. And I don't think it will be quite as bad as people are making out. But you can see why, at least last time around, we had the semblance of squad. And another thing, by the way, just quickly, because Dan was talking about the midfield, I think I tweeted in August that it was something like 67% of all the starts that our midfielders had made in the previous 3 seasons were either sold or loaned out in that window, or released. And obviously then Cantwell leaves in January, so you're probably looking at over 70%. That's the core of the central part of your team. And not only players who were central to the team, but probably characters as well in the dressing room. I think letting Steeperman, Vrancic and Teti all go in the same window, although they may not have been good enough for the league, I think maybe their presence in the dressing room was greater than we thought. I think that probably had a massive impact on the way things went as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really subtle point, because to lose them all and just go, we'll just replace them, and then not really having done that, I think there was an element of that. And I was a little bit uneasy, but it's hard because you're a bit like, well, yeah, but then you are also relying on Alex Teti in the Premier League, and that doesn't strike me as ideal. And everyone
it's about culture, though, isn't it? Like, because their culture setters in a dressing room, and I think the players that have come in, like, it's been a culture of losing that they've walked into, and that became far too acceptable for too long under Daniel Farke. As I say, I think we kept him too long, and then obviously we've replaced him with Dean Smith. So in January, you say, right, obviously we put all our chips in August. So the one card that you have to play, now you don't know if there's a buyer there, but say that you could have flogged Max Aarons. That was the only card we had to play. You could have cashed in on him because there was cover at right back. If you could keep Byron fit, obviously you can shift Brandon Williams over. There's a few options, few ways you can play it in order to do that. And then maybe spend that in another area of the pitch up front. Like, that's the one card that you could potentially have played in January to try and back the manager. But the thing is, you're bringing in a manager to work with a squad of duds, and a squad of duds that have got so used to losing that you can't lift them. So is it the quality of the players? Is it the quality of the culture? It can be all of those things. And when you actually add it all together, it's a cataclysmic disaster a season that has led to the point that you're getting into games completely devoid of hope. As you say, Steve, it's like there's not even any hope going into a game. You're going into it expecting to see the Groundhog Day of us getting beat and going down without a whimper. Without a whimper. Not even one.
With a game more to play.
What I would say is, but I think culture is slightly overrated, actually. I think good cultures come from winning, and a lot of people who've been in sports say the best dressing rooms culture is because they keep winning games. The Norwich City's culture was excellent this time last year. It was outstanding because they were winning games. As soon as you start losing games, that's when little tensions arise. That's when everyone starts blaming someone else. That's when the manager gets looked at by the players. That's when the manager doesn't start believing the players.
Is it not a club-wide thing, Dan, rather than
I don't know. I mean, I've often thought. I just think it's something that's built out of success. And then it just sort of evaporates as soon as the people on the pitch start losing games. I don't think a good culture comes before winning. I think winning comes and then brings in the good culture. I think it's that way around.
My former colleague at the EDP, Paddy Davitt, wrote, I thought, a really astute line in a piece that he did over the last couple of days, which was that Daniel Farke being sacked was the moment that the whole project over these first few years had lost its purity. I thought that was astute because that was it, wasn't it? Everything was so idealistic in terms of what Norwich were doing, and then all of a sudden, no question of it being right or wrong, but it was like, bam, we need to stay up here. This group of players need to be good enough. We've spent money. This is what we're going for now. So I wonder what sort of effect that's had on the whole sort of atmosphere in terms of where we are now and the recriminations of it. And of course, that made the contrast with being at Villa Park on Saturday so interesting, because I was in that mix zone. I remember 2 years ago you had I had Tim Krul walking up to us, sort of swearing at us in a nice way because he called us something sweary with a big smile on his face because he just won the title, and Teemu Pukki had the golden boot and all this sort of thing. And then in this same room on Saturday we had Grant Hanley, who it's hard to convey just how raw that was with him, but he's a difficult man to question at the best of times, and there was definitely that rawness there with him as well. I just thought that would probably be worth sharing as an insight. But I mean, how predictable, Steve, was it that it was going to happen at Villa Park? I mean, at least Emmy didn't score. He only set it up.
Yeah, it sort of felt inevitable, didn't it? And well, it didn't look like it was going to happen. And then obviously quickly Burnley did turn it around. Yeah, I mean, I sort of in a way glad that it's, we've got that closure now. And if it was going to happen, it might as well have happened there. It, like you say, the kind of juxtaposition between that and 3 years ago when, at the end of what was probably our best ever season that I can remember in my lifetime in terms of the entertainment value, it really did bring it home. The performance itself was very much, was very Norwich City 2021-22. Brandon Williams chucked in as usual, few good marauding runs and looked maybe our biggest threat, but also managed to force one of their players off the pitch with an over-exuberant tackle. Slip on his ass to give them the first goal and then give away the ball for the second goal. The guy who looks like he's trying the hardest, but simultaneously can't stop making mistakes. I think it even like when the second goal went in, you just kind of thought, well, yeah, that's not what you expected to happen. So no surprises, and it's not a great way to go down, but there's never going to be one, is there? So.
Okay, getting away from the buzzword of culture, a few people mentioning in the comments about the recruitment and the people that we've lost. You obviously, Jones went to Crystal Palace. You had Kieran Scott went to Middlesbrough. Ben Kensel, for all what your role was titled at Norwich City, has gone on, and I'm pretty sure he's the chief executive, but acting as sporting director at Hibernian. So from that team, that core team of recruitment staff that assembled the squad on for so little money in 18-19 that got us up and won the title in such swashbuckling fashion, we've basically lost all of that core, and what you've got left is internal promotions, a man and his wife, and the rest of the board members. That's all you've really got left. So who's there in that room to be a challenging voice is my question. Who's there to say, no, I don't like this about that player? I think Josh Sargent's goal record is appalling for a guy that's meant to be scoring goals for you in the Premier League. Watford aside, obviously. So that's my question here. Like, what has happened in terms of, because it seems to me that there's too much of, it's almost like Webber's dominion has now become so all-encompassing that he's got people that have always been answering to him now being the people that are meant to be challenging him in the room. So that's where I think something might have gone wrong in the recruitment process, because it can't just be a guy that has like pulled so many sort of diamonds from the rough, if you like, or whatever cliche you want to use, has now just not got an eye for a player at all. But it just goes to show that is a process that happens by committee. And what has happened is Norwich City have lost so many talented members of that committee and have not replaced them well enough. So that's maybe where the recruitment's been poorest, is in the recruitment department.
I agree with that, Stu. But what I would also say is our recruitment with that team for 1920 was also shocking as well for the last Premier League season, with Dermich and Amadou, etc. We had less money then, a lot less to play with. But I would say that the likes of Kieran Scott were under a lot of pressure if they'd stayed on to deliver for this Premier League season as well. And if Borough go up, he'll be under a lot of pressure there. It's 2 poor seasons of recruitment in the Premier League and 2 excellent seasons of recruitment in the Championship.
It's the spend this time that's so galling, though, isn't it? Because Norwich City actually spent money. And
14th highest in Europe, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was 11th actually, but I'll go with your number. But I mean, that's shocking to have such a poor return on that kind of spend. It's a radical indictment.
But all funded by losing their best player. So I will always come back to that when people talk about.
And also far smaller wages than any other Premier League club as well.
Mm-hmm. A couple of messages. I don't know if you've seen any as well, Steve, but Andrew Tickner here. We let Varka down so badly twice. I'm not sure which.
Was that in recruitment, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah, what was the second one? Can Andrew let us know what the second one was?
The two windows going into the Premier League.
Okay, maybe. Fair dues. And then the third time for the sacking, for the hat.
Yeah, maybe. Harry here has been in touch, but Sørensen is a holding midfielder. I mean, who's that?
That to me is one of the massive mysteries of this season. Where has he been? We were winning games when he was playing, and he just never gets used. I find it utterly. Maybe he looks so hopeless in training, but I don't understand why he doesn't get a look in at all. Particularly as you're playing behind players that are performing awfully and aren't going to be here next season.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing Sam Byram will play in central midfield before Sorensen in the same way he's played at centre back before actual centre back. So, so there's a couple there. I will keep looking through as we go on, and there's lots asking things further forward. So we might maybe be able to get to those when we start looking further forward ourselves. A couple of mentions about Josip Drumic, of course, or Dr. Mike. He is out of contract in the summer, I think. So don't think he's going to be around. Just so we're clear. Okay, well, with all that said and done for now, I reckon we should probably move on to this. Yes, it's Pick That One Out, where the podders each get a short window to bring up an issue they are struggling to let go, short of the ones we've already discussed. If they lose themselves for more than 30 seconds, the buzzer sounds perfect, seamless after 10 months. And it's time to let it go, maybe. Who'd like to go first? Hodgie, do you want to have a go? It's a thumbs up.
Does it need to be football related?
Well, if we could avoid politics, I would.
And the Daily Record.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe anything defamatory. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, right, I'm ready.
Regretting asking Stu to go first, and Steve's rubbing his hands.
You ready?
Yes. Yeah. Go for it. He says.
Right. So, right, this is pronounced Iron Brew, right? Not Iron Brew, because any English people I speak to are like, "Are you drinking some Iron Brew?" No, it's no Iron Brew. It's Iron Brew.
It's the
So
same
it's,
thing,
the accentuation is on the brew. No, it's like, so if you're in French class, right, and there's an accent on the iron, you'd say Iron Brew, right? Or if the accent was in the brew, you'd say Iron Brew, right? So it's Iron Brew, not Iron Brew, but Iron Brew.
Is it a difference between Michael Bailey and Michael Bailey?
Exactly. Iron Brew.
The same thing.
What's Les Malou? How would you pronounce that?
And by the way, people that's another one. People say Les Malou. It's Les Malou.
It's definitely Les.
Aye.
Definitely Les Malou.
But it's also, what is it, Michael? Is it Iron Brew or?
I don't. All I heard you say is it's not Iron Brew. It's Iron Brew.
No, it's Iron
It's Iron Brew.
No, not
It's
Iron Brew.
No,
Not
it's
Iron Brew. Not like an
Iron
iron
Brew.
bridge or an iron pot. It's Iron Brew.
But is
Brew.
it
Emphasis
Alex?
on the brew. Brewing it up.
Is it Alex Neil or Alec Neil?
Alec.
Yeah, we all know that one.
We're definitely tackling the big issues of relegation on this pod. So we can never not be accused of that, I think.
Thanks, Stu.
You're just glad I didn't say anything controversial, weren't you?
Yeah, to be honest. Yep. Right. Okay. Dan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Come on. This isn't like 1-0 down with 80 minutes to go. Let's show some fight. Jeez.
Should I go now?
Yeah, go for it.
I saw there's momentum building for some sort of fan protests against the board on Sunday, which, there's much better things to be doing on a Sunday than carrying around banners and flags and shouting at octogenarians. And I get the anger, and I get the fact that we've had a terrible season and our recruitment was poor and there are issues at the club, but maybe just how about protesting against the Premier League instead? Because it's them that has created the monster. It is the Premier League that has made us a yo-yo club. It's not the lack of investment, although, more investment would be nice. It's like kicking an Amazon delivery driver in the nuts instead of Jeff Bezos because of Amazon's lack of tax spend. You're protesting against the wrong people.
That last analogy was perfect.
Is it Jeff Bezos or Jeff Bezos? I had a little panic at the end there.
I don't think I've ever.
Bezos,
It's Jeff Bezos.
Is it Bezos? Okay.
Never mind that. It's Jeff. Anyway,
the world is run by Elon and Jeff.
Where did it all go?
No wonder Norwich
species.
Dan, I would be with you, but Brentford have stayed up, albeit they're 2-0 down, I think, at Manchester United. But
yeah, well, they kept their best player, didn't they?
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
that's nothing to do with the Premier League, is
And
it?
also, sounds like they offered more money to Christian Eriksen when we were in for him as well, or were sniffing around.
Yeah,
possibly.
that is a line. In
They do still have more money than us, Brentford. But you're right. I mean, there's a obviously
smaller
we
wage
can
bill
do
by all
better.
accounts.
We can do better on the pitch. A bit more investment may see us become a Brighton, who are spent 60 million quid to finish 14th, are in debt. A little bit more money could get us to that. But really, what's actually stopping us and other clubs, i.e. Watford and Fulham, is the behemoths of the likes of Liverpool, Man United, and Man City.
Yeah.
It's
That's what's
horrible.
really stopping us
the Premier
establishing
League's a
ourselves.
horrible league. I mean, football's dead because football's just so top heavy now. It's like global capitalism. It is now so top heavy that the rest of the world is eating itself.
This is what we were trying to stay away from on the rant.
It is interesting though, isn't it? The Liverpool Manchester City being able to win games at will, 10 games in a row is kind of being put forward as some kind of, we're so lucky that it's like, no, that's not what football is. You don't want teams being dominant in that way. And the same, we don't want the teams like Norwich and Watford coming up and getting 21 points. It's not healthy.
It's like Bayern Munich winning the Bundesliga 10 seasons in a row now.
Yeah.
It's 10 in a row. But there was something interesting from a Leeds fan that I read. It might have been one of the comments on one of the pieces, but and they said, look, we finished 9th, which I take it was right, last season. And that's probably it, really. That's as far as we're going to go, because you can't really compete with the teams above them, really. And you're like, what? Yeah, what do you aim for here? Anyway. Sorry,
well, the thing is, right, like Norwich City's aspiration is to be, obviously they're in a fight this year, but like Burnley, like mid-table mediocrity, have fun. Like, what's the point? What is the point in that? That's your carrot, right? And then, or this, right? Groundhog Day, a pish Fitbit every week.
Okay. Sorry, were you going to say something, Steve, or shall we? Is it just time for your pick that one out?
I'll pick that one out. I feel like,
Let's go. So, when you're ready.
Okay. I mean, this feels, I don't know, this feels like an odd pick that one out, really, all in all. But I just thought that the Sam Byram centre half thing is weird. I know he played quite well on Saturday, but I do sort of feel like, I know we're doing the looking ahead thing next, so we kind of have a few centre halves. So I don't really know where this experiment is going. Is this a long-term plan? Maybe it's just to see if we can play Sam Byram in every position this season, and maybe no one will notice. But I don't really get it when you've got other centre halves that you could play there, albeit haven't done that well, who will be here next season.
Yeah, really, that was really, because I was in line with the back line in the first half, and he was just noticeably dropping, too deep, and obviously trying to cover space, I suppose. But he was, playing people on the side and things like that, and it seemed like that just wouldn't have expected it from a normal, well-drilled centre back in a back line. But I do feel like Dean's seen Sam play there and feels like that's something that could be done going forwards. Which,
but in a 46 game season, he's not going to pick him ahead of Omobamidele next year.
Well, see, that's the point, right? Omobamidele's the next potential really good asset that we've got, right? And you've been playing Ben Gibson, which I know the Hanley-Gibson partnership last year, but Gibson's been a mistake waiting to happen in far too many games this season. Omobamidele's lack of game time this season has been pretty criminal as well. That's just another thing that's been done wrong.
Been injured, to be fair.
Mostly.
He has been injured a fair bit, but he's had more games than he has had. I don't think anyone would dispute that. Well, maybe you would.
Where, in terms of things we are not going to talk about, we've already had the links with Milot Rashica. Apparently, he's not going to be at Norwich next year. I think that's what some Kosovan website has said. It means that's where it happened. Take it with a pinch of salt, but it's interesting that that's popped up already. Todd Cantwell does sound... Man United are only 1-0 up against Brentford. There you go. Might change. Does sound like Todd Cantwell won't be being signed by Bournemouth, given the way things are happening and the noises there. We've spoken a lot about the two, best players that Norwich did lose last year, but Todd was clearly incredibly influential in that second half of last season.
We haven't even mentioned that, have we? And actually, that is something that was a massive hindrance that was nothing to do really with the recruitment and the board, and how, when we would, at the start of the season, sorry, this is a slightly rambling point, but we were talking about we cannot lose Todd. We cannot lose him. We need, £40 million. Would we even take that? And it's just gone horribly wrong.
Yes, we would take that way and would run to the bank.
Oh yes,
like even before, like all of this transpired, Todd Cantwell's never a £40 million player.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting season in situation come pre-season with that one. And I think that was it. I just want to mention Fulham. Congratulations to them, losing more games than Norwich this season, but scoring like 7,000 goals. It will be fascinating what they look like next year. Maybe they can do something that Norwich haven't been able to. We will see. I think that is everything, which I'm going to skip through the halftime sting, and instead we're going to bring it straight on to Centrefold. This was going to be basically the stop-off point for what happens next. I feel like we're going to be able to talk about this for a long time coming up, so it doesn't have to be definitive or even too deep. We can just have a quick chat for 5 minutes about whatever you want to be next. Obviously, it's the element we've probably had most questions on. But as Nick Fribbin says, Sørensen can also play centre half. So, it's another.
The comment above that suggests maybe Norwich should just join the Scottish Premier League. That's no better, mate. Don't worry, that's not a good idea, Paul.
No, we want to be playing up there every week.
Maybe win some games.
Well, maybe. Well, just like next season.
Maybe not, the way the squad's been playing this season. St Mirren 3, Norwich 2, whatever.
At least we see some goals. What do Norwich? What's the one thing Norwich need to do from here? Anyone? What is it? Because
buy a holding midfielder. Buy a holding midfielder.
Okay,
just buy one, a good one.
Buy a good holding midfielder. Okay, that's a good starting point. Just one, because they're going to be short of midfielders.
Can I wind this guy up?
Harrison Reed.
Can I wind this guy up?
You can.
Cultural reset.
Cultural reset.
Well, I'd be very happy with that because it means we're winning games.
This is true. Yes, indeed. Well said. I mean, the midfield is an interesting point because it does sound like Lucas Rupp will be leaving. Billy Gilmore is obviously only on loan. So that basically leaves Kenny McLean and
that went really badly wrong. That Billy Gilmore loan, did it? No, I called for him to be given time earlier in the season, but it's just no happened. Like, it's just the wrong signing, wrong move for him, wrong move for Norwich. Like, I mean, do you know what? Here's a fun game. Let's get through the signings and rate them out of 10. I bet you there's no more than a couple would muster even a 5.
Yeah, we could all just give them 3 and be done with it now.
Just give 3.
That seems like a very, very high grade. I think 1.8 is probably around the mean.
Out of 100. With Billy, it'd be interesting where Billy ends up next season. And I actually thought he was one of the better players in the yellow shirt on Saturday, to be honest.
Yeah, Norman was terrible. And actually, sorry, I know we're supposed to be moving on.
Can't move on, Steve. We can't move forward.
But has got away with some really bad performances in the last few weeks because the attention has been more on Gilmore and McLean. But he's been a bit Emperor's new clothes, unfortunately. In terms of what we should do for next season, yes. I think some creativity desperately needed. Linus Norton at 8.25 said, "How on earth do we sort this squad for next season? We have a sea of average." Sinani, Martin Hernandez, Porheta, Hugill, not to mention Sargent, Jolis, Dowell and Rashica, all unproven. It's a fair point. We have a lot of creative players in the squad, none of whom, only 1 or 2 of whom have really played well in a Norwich shirt before. I think we desperately need some new blood in that area. I saw us linked with, and there may be nothing in this, Callum O'Hare from Coventry. I think, to be honest, I wouldn't mind us going back to kind of, picking up players from that sort of level if we can afford to, and signing players who have played in the Championship will be hungry to get promoted. I sort of feel like if we're moving away from the model, then maybe we should start going more down that route again, as backward as it sounds, and stop with the kind of unproven players from abroad. It's all sounding a little bit Allardyce, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say.
But there's a fair point there that is the signing players from Europe now becomes incredibly tricky because of Brexit. As Norwich are no longer a Premier League club, they won't be able to afford players who would probably get the points that they could sign anyway. And that was kind of the thing I remember writing a lot about 2 years ago, is that Brexit for Norwich in the Championship is a bit of a disaster because the way they were even promoted 2 to 3 years ago without parachute payments doesn't exist anymore. They couldn't do it. They couldn't even bring in Daniel Farker, I don't think, as a head coach, because they just isn't that. Well, I don't think there is. I'm sure there's probably ways around things, maybe, but it certainly makes life a little bit more tricky. Okay,
so we've got. I think it makes more sense though to try and provide a platform within which some of these talents, who the vast majority of those should at least be championship level, can perform. Because I think you've got loads of players there that, for whatever reason or another, just haven't been doing it for Norwich City at Premier League level. But I'm not necessarily convinced that they're just going to waltz into the Championship and start playing well, because they're that used to losing. It was really interesting how quickly they turned from the sort of post-project restart thing from a losing team to a winning team again. I find it really, really hard to see that happening for a second time, because I thought part of that was mitigated by the fact it was the project restart. It was a short spell through which Norwich were pretty abject, but it was like everyone accepted there was mitigating circumstances, all of the rest of it. Whereas this time it's been a whole season of just misery, right? So turning that round to a kind of collective winning mindset again with the entire same group seems really hard. But at the same time, on the other hand, you think you've got players that are of the requisite quality. I think if you're talking about things we should do, Michael, I think we should try and move on a lot of the kind of deadwood, to be honest. No harm to them. Onel Hernandez, lovely guy, legend, could definitely do a job at championship level. But in terms of the future of the club, is he the answer? Don't think so. Jordan Hugo, Ben Gibson, I would put in this bracket. Good championship player. Do I necessarily want him next season? I don't know, because I reckon he'll be on a fairly decent wage packet. I'd try and move anyone of age and wage, try and move on from them, move towards the youth.
But the more you have a youthful team in the Championship, as a general rule, the trickier promotion would be, I would imagine. You've got to kind of balance it, I suppose. But
I think you have a few experienced heads. I'd keep the likes of Hanley and stuff like that. There's a few sort of linchpins in there that I'd probably keep Kenny McLean. You're going to think that's a Caledonian thing. It's not. But experienced kind of dressing room, definitely not Billy Gilmour, sadly. I wish he'd done better than he has, but not.
Ironically, he'd be probably an excellent player in the Championship. He'd run that division. But anyway, carry on.
Aye, but it's not the challenge Billy needs. But I think it's about keeping the right experienced people. But I think as a general rule, I'd try and move away from some of the more experienced players that have shown that they're not going to be Premier League players. I think not all of them, but get rid of some.
I mean, Kenny's very much in that bracket, isn't he?
Kenny's very much in that bracket, Dan. You can
and who else? I mean, who else is there? Like Pookie, obviously, he's staying and we need him. I think there are obviously holes in that squad, and midfield certainly needs a massive rebuild. But
I think
the distance between Premier League and Championship is growing and growing, as we've seen by the increasing number of yo-yo clubs in it. So it's still a good squad for the Championship. I mean, obviously, there's some proof. We don't know whether Josh Sargent will be able to kick a ball or have a first touch in the Championship. We don't know if Chollis will be able to do the same in the Championship as well. So there are definitely unknowns. But that back line is a good Championship back line. We've got one of the best strikers in the Championship, if not the best one next season, still in Timu Pukki. We've got Adam Eder, who under Smith looked revitalised entirely. And Kieran Dow, we've got a really good playmaker who was really influential at the end of the last Championship campaign as well. There are definitely holes, the midfield in particular, but that should be a squad under a good manager that will challenge again for automatic promotion. But as Hodgie says, it's getting the mindset changed from a losing team to a winning team as quickly as possible.
It's fascinating because Norwich obviously made two pretty bad starts in their last two Championship campaigns over sort of the first 5 or 6 games. So whether there'll be the patience around the place for that, if that happens next season, will be interesting. And likewise, they did have the whole season without anyone there. When they were 1-1 at home to Wickham, I don't know how tense that becomes, rather than just Mario.
And we did, yeah. And Ollie Skip and Emi Buendia were the two best players in the league.
Just Michael, just a couple of quick things. First of all, people saying in the comments that we're not mentioning Lungi Sørensen. We are. Don't worry. We know he's here. I don't know if people haven't been here from the start. And the other thing, just to mention on the age point, the average age of the squad has been creeping up Or rather than the squad, the first team to close to 29. In fact, is the first time it's been over 28 since the last game before Daniel Farke in the last few matches. So whereas before, when we went down, our average starting lineups were around 26, 27. Now they're more like 28, 29. So that is a sign. And obviously, part of that is down to having the same players and then being 2 years older. But the squad generally does seem to be a bit aging.
Well, likewise, I wrote a lot of pieces 2 years ago about the crown jewels and what was going to happen to them. If I was to write a piece on crown jewels now, I don't know if I would have anyone to really mention.
Max Aarons,
he's one jewel.
So, I mean, as far as I understand it, Norwich is still going to need to sell if they're going to need to fund a rebuild of the squad or to bring in some players. So, I don't think you get much money for Todd Cantwell as things stand at the moment. And, is anyone ringing up the phone for more than 15 million quid offers for Max Aarons? I don't know if they do. So, that's not good. That's a regression from where everything was.
That's the key thing. So, look, valuation, right? Valuation of the squad heading into 1920, you were looking at it and you were thinking a half decent half season and Emi Buendia alone's 50 million quid. You know what I mean? You sell the collective Norwich City squad right now. I don't know if you get that. So that's the thing that we've moved so far away. Andrew Omobamidele could be another one that I think could be worth like a considerable amount of money. I think he's a really, really talented player. Adam Ida, maybe. Any of the rest of them, I think you've still got to say there's a lot to be proven for them even to be in the conversation yet.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you who I'm looking forward to in the Championship is Les Malou. I think he'll. I mean, maybe his legs are too spidery and maybe he'll just be broken early on, but he's also got the ability, I think, to be a bit of a Mario in the Championship. I think kind of nonchalant, kind of spraying the ball around. Good final third passes, that kind of stuff, and hopefully become a bit of a cult hero. Either that or his legs will just snap with the first time they have to go up to Rotherham or to Preston.
I just wonder if the Norwich may have looked one way as a Premier League club when he left Nice, and it might look a little bit different as a Championship club when he was, previously in
a bit less Nice.
So yes, indeed, we'll see. That will be an interesting one, and I would say there's actually a discussion to be had over Tim Quill's future, just in terms of the World Cup coming up, and I would love, obviously, for him to be able to ride that out. But it has kind of been in the back of my mind that Angus Gunn coming in was always going to make this summer a little bit interesting. We'll see. I hope it doesn't happen, but depends what offers come along, as always, doesn't it? We've quite a few agents on their phones now. Let me work on it. So we shall see. Steve, when you mentioned that message and you said someone we hadn't mentioned, I thought it was going to be on. It was going to be Stuart Webber, because we've had obviously lots of questions on Stuart Webber. Are we all expecting him to still be in charge of the recruitment over the summer and Norwich's sporting director next season?
If I had to guess, I'd say no, but I don't have any intel there at all. It's just a hunch.
That's interesting, though. Dan?
Depends how bored he is. If he's bored, he'll be off. If he's not bored yet, he'll stay.
Okay. Stu?
Start of next season, did you say? Sorry.
Yeah.
He'll still be here.
There you go. Well, we shall see.
What do you think, Michael?
I think he will be, but I think that it's not probably completely decided. I think it's sort of probably something that's being toyed with in terms of the best way forward. But I would be surprised if he wasn't looking after the summer. I would also say, whilst I look at Norwich and I fear, I'm really torn. I'm really torn at the moment. I can see West Brom mid-table repeating here. Definitely. I can see it just not happening this time around in the Championship, regardless of what happens. But I do think there is far more chance of that not happening if Stuart Webber is running the show than if he wasn't, because I don't trust anyone that would be left behind to then sort out that quickly, if I'm honest. So, that's how I see it. Whether that's a good position for Norwich to be in.
What are you saying about Neil Adams, Michael?
Well, he's never done the job before. I wasn't particularly picking up on anyone individually, but I don't necessarily believe the best thing would just be to give Neil the job and hope, and do that. But what do I know? Nothing.
Didn't work with the manager's job, did it? So.
Ow, deep blow. It didn't, and also it didn't. Right. I reckon we move on because we're doing well. Let's crack on. Finally, then, for a bit of Motti.
This is almost fantasy football.
Norwich have still got 4 games left. I think I've said that a couple of times.
Oh, joy.
The first one is West Ham at home, which, of course, Michail Antonio scored 4 goals in that fixture 2 years ago. Also, when Norwich, I think that might have been the game Norwich were confirmed as relegated, wasn't it? They did very much blur into each other. I remember losing at home to Brighton, and that was like effectively relegation. And then West Ham was, then there was West Ham, and then there was also Burnley when Norwich went down to 9 men. So we could get anything. And obviously people could be bringing banners. There are people talking about protests. I have no idea if that's going to be 2 people or 20 people or 200 people or 2,000 people or 20,000 people. We'll see what it looks like on Sunday. Yeah. So West Ham. That's exciting. They've got their Europa League semi-final second leg.
Good luck to them.
So and Eintracht. Is it Eintracht Frankfurt they're playing?
Yes.
Looked a far better side than them at the London Stadium, which I thought was quite amusing. During
that game. I started Googling their manager just to see if he might want to fancy coming to Norwich at any point.
But from the Europa League,
they played some decent football, didn't they?
You think?
Really nice football.
Anything?
I'm going to have to depart, by the way.
Oh, that's fine, Stu. Yes, you do need to go.
I'm sorry, but
I'll let you go. Stu's got a proper job to do tonight. Good luck.
Well, I'll try. Thank you for having me on, everyone. I really appreciate it. It's been nice. Thank you for some of the nice comments and stuff as well. Read Benjamin David Skelton's comment. It's a belter. Cheerio, troops.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Stu. There we go. I'll read that before I publish it. Anything anyone wants to say about the?
Only that if the Irons brew up a good performance at Carry Road on Sunday, how would we be pronouncing that?
You really should have brought that in a minute ago, shouldn't you?
I'm really annoyed that he left. I've been waiting to use that for about half an hour, and he just left.
It may be nice to finish on more points than last season, 2 seasons ago, as we're on the same at the moment. 21.
Are we not got 22?
No, we're on. That's exactly where I'm at. I'm thinking, are we going to beat last season? And I think this might be as good a chance as we'll get, to be honest, against a team who will have played a European semi-final on Thursday, although they are a very good side. But Leicester away, Wolves away, Spurs at home. I'm not seeing a lot of points out of those 3. So that's if there's anything of interest at all in these last 4 games, it's that sort of. If they draw or win, it'll be pointless. It'll be useless after that because nothing else. I suppose the other thing is somehow we may still not finish bottom this season if we pick up more points.
Well, I was going to. I changed my my rant right at the last second actually because I was going to talk about Watford, who being 1 point above us and spent considerably more money, sacked their manager twice, and yet somehow seem to not fall into the bracket of being the Premier League's most embarrassing club ever, which is how the national media seem to see Norwich City. They're 1 point above us, and they're yo-yoing as well. How do they avoid the kind of stuff that we get aimed at us?
I suppose because we've just been worse so far, both seasons.
Yeah, I mean, that's a given.
Like considerably 2 years ago. But yeah, that would be something. And I mean, I don't know what's gone on at Burnley, but I still think there's an argument that maybe Norwich haven't been. Oh, I don't know though, because then every stat, Norwich are the worst team in the division in pretty much every stat you look at. So I should probably caveat that. It's just having seen them beat Watford and having seen them beat Burnley. We haven't been beaten by Burnley this year. I
mean, I think the one thing that's made me think, I'm glad to be a Norwich City fan rather than that Premier League club this season, is that Watford have lost, is it 11 home games in a row? 11
record. Premier League record.
Games. That is mad. Like, of all the terrible things we've done, well, at least we've never done that.
Not yet. They only have 19 home games all season?
19 One of them was against us as well. They lost against home to us.
3-0. Norwich haven't won a game away from home in the Premier League by 3 or more goals since 1994.
Didn't the game before that 11-match streak started, didn't they beat Man United 4-1?
They did, yeah. Solskjaer's last game, wasn't it? And they've got, I think, Everton to come before the end of the season, who are hopeless away from home. So that'll be interesting to see who's worse.
Well, it was like when they got relegated, didn't their really bad form then towards the end of the season start after they beat Liverpool? And they were like the first team to beat Liverpool, weren't they? Oh, well, we'll have to see who their new manager is going forwards, obviously. Likewise, Burnley, because I don't know who's going to come down with Norwich at the moment. Maybe it will be Leeds, after all we'd said over the course of the year. They're dragged into it. I think we're kind of emphasising how interested we are in the game on Sunday by how much we're talking about it. Do we think there'll be what are we expecting from the atmosphere? Just finally, will it be horrible? Will it be empty? Is the one I'm thinking. It's Sunday lunchtime. It's on the telly. What will the attendance be?
Is it on the telly?
Is it not on the telly?
I think they just moved it for
4 o'clock. Is it 4 o'clock?
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I think it's more likely to be half empty than it is to be particularly hostile. I think there'll be a few people with some sheets of A4 sellotape together. That'll probably be about it. Sorry if anybody listening's got that planned, but I don't see a massive protest, if I'm honest. And as Dan's already said, there shouldn't really be one, to be honest. I don't know what it would achieve.
Yeah, pretty symbolic, really.
Just out of nowhere, Michael, I just remember the line in your piece about us not having the money to spend in January because the BK8 thing happened, which I assume was obviously a bit of a club line, maybe. And it just seems like we'd probably have had a lot more money to spend in January if we hadn't wasted it on Josh Sargent and Chollis. Because I know like Stuart Webber and the club are quite keen to peddle that line, that BK8 stopped us having a 2 million quid or something like that, or 1.5 million extra to spend, when really just don't buy Josh Sargent for £10 million.
I mean, yes, you're right. It was one of the lines in there that probably, that sat there, but also kind of contradicts.
It just intrigued me because it just reminded me of, what the line the club tried to spin is that we would have bought better in if we'd somehow kept BK8 and it was the fans' fault that we got rid of them. When really, 1 or 2 million quid difference, 1.5 to 2 million quid difference. Yeah.
What I would say on that is, I spoke to a lot of people for the piece. People outside the club said it to me as well. So I was a bit like, oh, okay. And you could be talking about a loan signing, I suppose, rather than a permanent signing. So that's kind of why it went in. But likewise with the Christian Eriksen stuff. I mean, I could have rung up Christian Eriksen and said, "Do you want to come to Norwich?" Oh, really? Oh, okay, no. So
do you want to come on the On the Ball podcast?
Yeah, I should. Yeah, I'll see that.
Five-a-side on a Wednesday night up at Goals.
It'd be quite handy.
And I suppose also maybe don't make BK8 the sponsors in the first place. That would have
well, that would also help, wouldn't it?
Did rather set the tone, didn't it? I haven't eaten a hot dog since. Right, I think in that let's end this charade, shall we? Or is it charade?
There have been some excellent questions tonight, and I don't think we've had the chance to go through all of them really. But I think
there are a couple you want to throw out there.
Well, I mean, just a who. Well, this is just more of a question for us. But who would the 925 Jingus? Who would the lads like to be the third club to go down with us? Be Burnley, Leeds, or Everton?
Burnley, I think, for the reasons of financial issues, still managerless in the event of relegation. That's probably why. I think Everton, although they've got those, are still a very big club and they do tend to bounce back. I don't know, Leeds. Yeah, I just don't like Leeds. I love Leeds, really. I'd never say that.
Don't go there again.
Yeah. So
it feels like Burnley probably have already got a good championship squad to come straight back up. Leeds, it's always quite fun to go to Ellen Road if you're winning. So I wouldn't mind them coming down. And Everton, just for the Everton fans' sake, to give them something to shout about, something to actually, a bit of joy, a bit of like, this is the most they must feel alive in about 15 years. Because they've just been hovering around 8th to 14th for the last 15 years, nothing to play for. Finally, they have a relegation battle, and if they get relegated, they'll probably have a promotion campaign as well. So
Such empathy, Dan, to be thinking of the Everton fans
yeah,
like that.
but really, I think Leeds though, because well, my dad's a fan, and going to Ellen Road's one of the best away days, isn't it?
Well, fair enough. Good stuff. Thanks, Genghis, for that one. Thanks for all
Steve,
the questions.
what do you think?
Oh yeah, Steve.
Well, I think I answered this one last week, but that was before Leeds were in the picture, or when they weren't so much. I think Burnley would be better for us, just because I think they might have financial issues, but Everton would be quite funny, wouldn't it? Let's be honest. They'd run away with the league, but I think just for it happening would be
Although,
very interesting.
Quite fun to see Frank Lampard not get into the top 6 with Everton as well.
It's true. Hodgie did bring up the comment, didn't he? So I'll pop it up here. Benjamin David Skelton says all that from top to bottom. Oh dear, I can't read. From top to bottom in the club this year, we've been a shambles. Emmy went and we had to let him go. Camwell hasn't wanted to be with us for years. Okay. And we signed no replacement for these guys. The recruitment has been nothing short of appalling, and the stats read the same as last time we were in the Premier League. Something has to change, people. A clear out on players is needed, and tactics by the gaffer need to implement a style that is clear and positive for the fans. So there we go.
It's a good point on the tactics and style, isn't it? I think Dean Smith's been desperately trying to find one that might save us, whereas he'll have the summer now to actually implement something that he thinks will get the best out of the group we're left with.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. On that note, I think we're done, aren't we? That's it for On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that is already looking forward to seeing Paul Warne. Congratulations to Rotherham, by the way. How about that? Football's so predictable. People think it's like, not... if you yet to do so, make sure you subscribe via your podcast player of choice. Pod is free for anyone on your usual podcast player. And we do stream the podcasts live as well on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So keep an eye out for those on my social media channels. Probably the best way to find those. Ratings and reviews, wherever prompted, are always hugely appreciated. And if you want to get in touch with any questions or topic proposals, please do sling me a direct message on Twitter. And at some point, I'll go through them. A big thank you to our guests tonight. Thank you so much to Hodgie, who has, of course, he downed his bottle of Iron Brew. I still don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce it. Iron Brew. And it was a pleasure to have Stu on. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Michael.
Steve, pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks, Michael.
Indeed. Even relegation pleasure. We'll be back next week for a fresh bout of Canaries capers, maybe calamity capers, in another edition of On the Ball. Then this is the bit I didn't rewrite this from last week, did I? In another edition of the On the Ball Norwich City podcast. Until then, never mind the danger. And we're clear for a Wits End. Welcome everyone out there to Wits End. I'm not even. Had enough. It's been a long weekend.
Your intros have not been on their usual sparkling form this week, Michael.
No.
I've enjoyed them.
It's unprofessional, really, isn't it? It's just like it doesn't mean
I didn't say
anything
that.
now.
I did. Say that.
I did.
90% effort. That's what we're getting.
No comment.
Sorry.
On the Ball podcast number 42 is the first time we did Wits End. Should we do Wits End next season? It's a question. It's a bit like Stuart Webber's future. Will this carry on?
Maybe the people should decide, and if
put it
no one says anything, then that might be our answer right there, to be honest.
Well, they haven't yet, and I did say that a couple of weeks ago. We could just, like when, Delia and Michael get their offer for their shares from the person who's going to take, the club over, they put it to a vote of supporters, won't they? So maybe we should do that, put it to a vote of all of the Twitterkers. One bit of, you can email this part of the pod, by the way, twitterkers@icloud.com. That's Twitter, KERS @icloud.com. Same for the hashtag. You can use that. Why are you two laughing? I don't know. I expect I'll find out in a minute. Nick,
Don't look at the comments, Michael.
okay, brilliant. We did mention last.
Someone is very keen on Wits End.
Okay.
I'm not sure what we're going to have to do with Whitson next season, but I don't think it's going to end well for any of us, judging by the comments.
Okay, brilliant. Nick Dye got back in touch because he sent the US Open Cup message with just the hashtags Twittergers and Fulham Market, and I didn't know what that meant because I'm a bit dim. But we did actually explain it in the end, right? The US Open is the USA version of the FA Cup, and Nick is from Fulham Market and a coach living in California. Sadly, they did lose in the fourth round to San Jose Earthquakes 5-0, but that's obviously Darren Huckabee's old team, isn't it?
Mm.
But the point here in his original tweet was that Bay Cities FC beat Monterey Bay FC with a late winner, or as they put, deep into the 90, and Monterey Bay are managed by Frank Yallop. So effectively, that is Norwich City 1, Ipswich 0. So there we go. Or
Did you see the Norwich City derby in League One? Not the derby, but the rivalry on the weekend with Rotherham and MK Dons both having Norwich-born managers going for second place.
Oh yeah.
Both teams won, but Rotherham pipped MK Dons to second. Liam Manning, MK Dons, who sounds like a very exciting, young, up-and-coming, bright manager who just happens to have been born in Norwich.
Mm. He was a coach at Ipswich, I think, as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. And at he was at West Ham's under-23s coach, I think.
Happy days. That's great.
I had a quick question, which is it's slightly unfortunate that Hodge is gone because it's not, thank God, but it is about Celtic because I noticed, which is Stu's second team for those who don't know him, or possibly his first. I can't keep up. But John Terry was pictured, I think, in the Celtic director's box with a Celtic scarf on during the Old Firm derby, which would have absolutely enraged Stu. So it's a real shame that he's not here. But I just wondered is there anyone in football? I mean, obviously there's people outside of football. Was there anyone worse that you can think of that could turn up in the Norwich City director's box with a green and yellow scarf than John Terry? I'm trying to think if there's anybody I would like to see less.
Do we mean football people or
football people?
World
they can.
People?
No, because I think you could obviously pick. There are people in the world who are worse.
Kevin Muscat.
That is a good one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
unless he was there as to set him up for the fans to get their revenge on him.
I think those Delia out protests would definitely go up a notch if Kevin Muscat was sat next to her in the director's box. Mike Ashley says DW. That's a good shout.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just noticed. Yeah, we've got lots of.
We do have lots
of comments.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Paul. Yeah, I think Paul Woodrow flagged this up earlier as well. So, Mike Ashley. There you are. DW next year's shirt sponsor. That's a good question. I don't know because I think they just only signed a 1-year deal. Can't remember.
I think he may or she may be referring to the comments above that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
It's a good gag, though. It's a good gag.
You know what, DW? 10 points. You get 10 points for me for that. Paul Woodrow.
It's not going to make any sense to anyone just listening on the podcast, is it?
No. Best gams.
Yeah.
Fun.
There's a really good.
Oh, wow. Steve literally just plugged them. Thanks, Steve. Brilliant. Paul Woodrow flows in. No, it's fine. But we've done tooth puns in past Twittergers, and he's thrown one in with Malky Decay.
Nice.
Which is strong. Yeah.
Much like his career as well.
Or could you have milk tooth Mackay?
Not quite as.
No, all right. You obviously couldn't say. Sorry, I mentioned it.
Malky Decay is probably better. Probably. I'm not really sure now. This is where I go quiet.
I think there's a comment from Ted Moore at 9:30 which really sums up the whole existential crisis of being a Norwich fan at the moment. If you can find it, Michael.
Yes.
Do we want to go up again?
I mean, we can have a joke about this. I do think that is a significant question everyone at the club has to answer because there's been bruising, hasn't it?
But the alternative is being a mid-table championship side, which is that even worse? Just drifting along, winning the occasional game against Preston again, losing the occasional game against Preston.
Everyone loves the Championship, right?
Which goes back to my rant, which I got called on the comments a Delia apologist for. That, why go up to the Premier League when you've got no chance of, very little chance of survival? It's becoming, increasingly futile.
The same logic is, though, why not go down to League One? Because, last time we did really well there.
Yeah, new grounds as well.
Exactly.
I mean,
let's go.
I just want to feel again. I want to feel something like this year's been pointless. The year before we weren't allowed in the ground. It always felt like we were probably going to go out. The year before that was pointless. So really, we haven't had a proper season since 18. I feel like 18-19 was so good that we've been made to pay for it. That's
what I think. Years. Watching that Fulham win 7-0 earlier, just it cheered me up because I did feel something. It was kind of that muscle memory of 18-19 season when it felt so good, and the idea that we might be able to get some of that back next season.
But I remember too. A year last season, it took about 3 or 4 games to look at West Brom and Fulham and go, they are both going down. I remember that so distinctly, and they both did comfortably. So it will be fascinating.
How many did it take this year with us, though? Was it 3 or 4?
5, yeah.
Okay.
Watford. Right. That second half, it was all over from that point on, really. And I adamant, and I was angry, and I said it as much. And so, or maybe even the Newcastle friendly, because I tell you what, they were awful in that, but they were mitigating thingies. Genghis comes back and says, you don't want to go back up to the Premier League until you realise how bad mid-table championship is. Yeah.
So basically, none of it's good, because obviously we've already talked about the fact that if you go up, then you'll stay up, you'll just end up being a Burnley. So maybe we should just sack the whole thing off and support someone else.
Why can't we just keep winning the championship and not go up?
Yeah, I could do. I think that happens in other sports. Just turn down promotion. No thanks. You're right. Yeah, then we could do that. Paul Woodrow does come up with a good reason, saying it will annoy TalkSport. I mean, it won't just annoy TalkSport. It would, if Norwich are promoted, that's a reason for promotion. It would annoy everyone. Can you imagine it? Everyone would be like, oh, God, not this lot again. And they would like that this year, but can you imagine it next time?
Oh, yeah.
They'd literally be, it would just be, oh, my Lord.
Is this the third time for Fulham in a row? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, they got 2 playoff finals.
So we're still behind them.
Yeah.
Although,
and obviously we can keep extending our relegation record, because obviously we're on 6 at the moment, and West Brom haven't gone back up to catch us. So yeah, we can really pull clear if we go back up and go back down again.
And one more, Declan Cotter says, do you guys miss the Derby game, given there won't be one next season? Shame we can't get the 6 easy points. That's why I don't miss the Derby, because I'm getting, I mean, not this season obviously, but I fear that they're on the up and up, and we might be meeting them again soon. It feels like a ridiculously long time. Was it 14 years for them not to have beaten us? I keep thinking there's a comeuppance due, but
I'd happily keep it like that, Steve.
I think
15 years, 16 years, keep it ticking over.
We don't need to play them again, do we? Really? When you think about it, there's no need. It's all right.
Luton are all right.
Completed it. Luton or Cambridge, they push on. Right. With all that done, I think we're done. I've even scrolled my script beyond. Any other business? Anyone?
I feel like we're exhausted.
I think there is nothing left to talk about.
See you for the protest, Steve, on Sunday.
Yeah.
Bring along your banner.
Yeah. I've just heading off to the printer now.
That is a good question. What would you put on your banner?
I think someone earlier on the comments said hashtag Delia Webber out, which so I think I'd probably go with that, just because I don't know who Delia Webber is, but she needs to get out.
Okay. Yeah, come on. Dan, what would you? Yeah, because you've always got to bear in mind, you've got to make it sort of scam well. You don't want to be writing it and then you get halfway through the word, but you've only got,
just maybe a big angry red face. Put that on there, just to sum up how angry the protesters are. Big angry face.
Actually, I think what I would put is it's Iron Brew, not Iron Brew. And, just so people would definitely understand.
I think I would draw a Saudi Arabia flag That would go down well.
Newcastle fans annoyed as well.
Stephen Bird says "fuck forever." There we go. Paul Woodrow says, "Great pod, guys. Thanks." I'm actually gonna post some praise. There we go. It has been like almost an hour and a half.
Nice,
And Linus Norton says, "Yes, Dan." I don't know what
was that about?
All of it.
Keeping Twitter's going.
Everything you've said. No, I don't think anyone said anything about Twitter's. But they wouldn't have had this, brilliant 15 minutes, which is 3 times how long it should be. We're done. Gentlemen, thank you so much for a lovely evening. Thank you for giving up your time on a bank holiday. I do really appreciate it. And I'm sure the watching masses do too. So thank you so much. I'll let you get back to whatever it is you're going to do now. And I'll say goodbye. And we'll all say bye on 3, shall we? 1, 2, 3.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go. And then I always mute them. I haven't worked out how to. It doesn't matter. Right, that is it. If you want to get in touch with Twitterkers and future pods, then please do so. Hashtag Twitterkers, Twitter KERS. Email us Twitterkers, Twitter KERS @icloud.com. But until next time, that's a wrap. And that is the end of the podcast. I hope that was okay. Hope you all enjoyed it. We'll do another one next week after the West Ham fun, when I'm sure there'll be plenty still to talk about, and we'll make sure we do that proper Q&A pod as well coming up too, where you guys can set the agenda on what we're going to talk about, which could be hilarious. Have fun, have a lovely evening, and I will see you at Carrot on Sunday, if not before. Take care.